Hey everyone, Technicade here, and in this video I'm going to share my thoughts and experience of using the iPhone 4S as a daily driver in 2022. I have a soft spot for this phone in particular. The iPhone 4S was my first ever iPhone. I originally bought this back in 2011 for £500 brand new from the Apple Store. Remember when the flagships didn't cost £1,000? But now, 11 years later, I bought this from eBay for only £17, and that's including postage. But before we get into the review, if you could give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to see videos similar to this, it would be a huge help. Cheers! So my first impressions of this phone after taking it out of the packaging was just how premium it feels. With glass on the back and front and aluminum covering the sides, the design of this phone holds up well even today. That's because most flagships now are made using the same materials and design. Even the iPhone 13 has the same design language. With its flat aluminum edges and glass back, it makes this iPhone 4S look like an iPhone 13 mini. The layout of this phone is really similar to the iPhone 3GS, with a volume rocker and sound switch on the left, the SIM card slot on the right hand side, power button and a headphone jack at the top, and the old 30-pin connector on the bottom. On the back, while the camera may still be tiny, it's been upgraded to a relatively impressive 8 megapixels. While the front still hosts a 3.5-inch display, home button and an earpiece speaker, it also benefits from a front-facing camera, so I'm finally able to take all the selfies I like. Fantastic. Coming back to that display though, while it may still be 3.5 inches, it's been upgraded to what Apple called at the time a Retina display. This may not sound like a high resolution, but thanks to the display size, it means it's crisp and clear at 326 ppi. It's a lot better than the iPhone 3GS's effort anyway, as that display was only 480 by 320, which delivered a measly 163 ppi. Next to each other, the difference is really noticeable. While the iPhone 4S was released with iOS 5, Apple continued to update it all the way to iOS 9. That's a decent 4 years of software support. Not many Android phones get that these days. This iPhone is running the latest software available for it, which is iOS 9.3.6. Compared to iOS 6 running on the iPhone 3GS, the design has been totally overhauled. Apple got rid of the skeuomorphic design in favour of a more modern, minimalist design. Overall, iOS 9 has a lot more modern comforts, such as emojis, a redesigned app switcher, and universal search. It was also the first iPhone to feature Apple's virtual assistant Siri, but compared to modern iPhones, the performance of the assistant is so slow that I doubt I'll even bother using it. A few features from iOS 9 were actually omitted from the iPhone 4S due to the fact that it doesn't have a 64-bit processor. I don't think I'll miss the Siri proactive screen though. There's good news on the apps front too. Even though I couldn't download apps from the App Store when searching for the app, downloading the app from my purchase history provided an option to download the last working version. This means I was able to download apps like Twitter and Reddit and actually use them. I'm not sure if this works for every app though, so your mileage may vary. Also, the weather app actually works this time, as it ditches Yahoo Weather for the Weather Channel. So what was this phone like to use as a daily driver in 2022? Well, let's just say I've got some thoughts. I'll start off with the positives. First off, I actually managed to log into my iCloud account. iOS 9 seems to have the prompt for entering 2FA codes, so I was finally able to add it in. This means I was able to sync my contacts, notes, and reminders. This was really handy, as I didn't need to manually add my contacts in like I did on the iPhone 3GS. Secondly, actually being able to install and use apps on this made the experience a whole lot easier. I did have to use a sort of workaround of downloading them from my purchase apps like I mentioned earlier, and they don't really perform that well, but having them there is better than not having them at all. However, I guess not all apps were created equal, as some didn't give me the option to download all versions, and others, even though they did give me that option, just didn't work at all, but I'll go over that in the negatives. Another positive is the screen. While it may be small at 3.5 inches, the Retina display makes this a lot nicer to look at than the iPhone 3GS's screen. I have the Retina display to thank for that. I didn't find the display too small either. Text was easy enough to read, and I didn't find myself tapping the wrong thing too much. Speaking of small, that's the one word I would use to describe this phone. It almost hides in my pocket compared to the Pixel 6, and I didn't get tired of holding it like I used to with my Galaxy S21 Ultra. I also have to give a shout out to the headphone jack. I haven't had one of these on a phone for years, but it's definitely one of my favourite features of the iPhone 4S. Of course, it has Bluetooth, and I could pair up my Sony XM3s to listen to music, but being able to use my Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs around the house made me fall in love with them all over again. For the times when I left the house, I went full old school and bought a pair of JVC gummy earphones. They may not hold a candle to my Samsung Bud Pros, but for a cheap and cheerful pair of wired earbuds, they're okay. Of course, this phone gets the basics done fine. Phone calls are clear, iMessage sends those crisp blue bubbles that us Android peasants can only dream of, and all of Apple's other basic but reliable stock apps serve me well. The last positive I want to talk about is the camera. While it may not be anything mind-shattering, the 8-megapixel camera on the back actually gives decent photos, and the 1080p video it gives is also serviceable. The front-facing camera is nothing to write home about though, but it's serviceable. Now let's talk about the negatives. The biggest negative I want to talk about is just how slow and laggy this phone is during use. I can't tell you how many times I opened an app to just see a white screen that outstayed its welcome, even if the app was open just minutes earlier. General navigation is also slow and laggy. I would say the responsiveness of this phone is even worse than the iPhone 3GS, which I reviewed in my last video, go check it out. I tried to alleviate the slowness by reducing system animations in the accessibility settings, but it barely helped. The Apple A5 processor may be old, but I can't help but think that iOS 9 is behind the performance issues. I've heard it performs a lot better on iOS 6, but decided against downgrading. The second biggest negative was the battery life. This phone never managed to make it through a full day of use, and never before have I seen a phone drop 12% battery in just 10 minutes. By just opening Twitter and Reddit and using them for 10 minutes, the battery took a dive. I had to carry on a battery pack with me to make sure that this wouldn't die in the middle or even the beginning of the day. I'd attribute this to the battery age, which while I could replace the battery and possibly breathe new life into this device, I decided it really wasn't worth it. Another negative were the apps. While there were some I could actually download through a workaround on the App Store, there were some apps that let me download them and just plain refused to work. I successfully downloaded WhatsApp, but when trying to verify the code it sent me, it told me that the version of the app wasn't supported anymore. Why even offer it through the App Store then? YouTube was similar. It would let me download the app, but then nothing would actually load. Now this is of course an opinion, but another negative for me is the software design. Coming off the iPhone 3GS onto this made me really miss the skeuomorphic design Apple used back in iOS 6. While I appreciate the sleek and modern look, compared to iOS 6 it just feels soulless. Of course, this is an opinion, so if you prefer this design, then I'm happy for you. Yet another big negative for me was just how hot this phone got during normal use. I downloaded a few albums from Apple Music to test out the headphone jack, but got pretty spooked when it got really hot. The last thing I want is an old, overworked device blowing up in my pants or setting fire in my hand. Despite my worries, even after a game of Temple Run, the game didn't get too hot to hold, but just hot enough to make me uncomfortable using it for way too long. There's also the lack of modern conveniences. I mentioned this during the iPhone 3GS review, but using an old device like this makes you realise and miss features that we take for granted on modern devices. Features like Touch ID or Face ID that help us get into our devices quickly and securely, contactless payments that make shopping a breeze, and wireless charging for the nightly charge. Instead, you have to enter a PIN every time you unlock the device. The cards in my wallet got used for the first time in a while, and charging was relegated to plug in the ancient 30-pin connector, which made me feel like a caveman. Plus, if I were to lose that cable, I'd be buggered. Okay, so to wrap it up, does the iPhone 4S still hold up in 2022? It's a no from me. Despite the memories I had of this device, even nostalgia didn't manage to make this experience enjoyable. If you plan to use this device as a smartphone in 2022, you're better off saving your money for a modern budget phone. However, if you're more tech savvy, I would actually recommend using this as a dumb phone if you can downgrade it to iOS 6. From what I've heard online, the experience on the iPhone 4S is a lot better running that version. Please let me know if you managed to do this in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested to see it run iOS 6. Okay, so that's my review and thoughts of trying to use the iPhone 4S in 2022. I really wanted to like this device more than I did because of my personal history with it, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. Have you ever owned an iPhone 4S? What was your experience like with it? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to see videos similar to this one. Bye!